Hi, everyone. Welcome to my podcast, the first episode of The Ripple Effect. This has been a long time coming, but anyone who knows me with any sort of depth knows that I'm kind of late for everything, so it's quite on brand. Anyways, I won't delay any further. Please check it out and enjoy. Thanks. Thanks for coming out. Welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. Okay, my name is Daniel Godino. I'm kind of like the host of the show, so to speak. This is going to be hopefully a 6-episode series that we can kind of start off. Julian's going to be kicking us off for us. Just a little bit about myself briefly. I'm a physiotherapist. Nothing really special about me. I just decided to do this podcast because I thought, as I was learning all the years through school with like health and all that kind of stuff, there was a lot of information that I came across that I kind of thought was important for like the general public to know. And then as I've had my own journeys through life with like psychology and like my own mental health like issues and whatever else, I kind of just expanded on that. And I was like, you know what, I would love to have a way to give back so people can understand what they're doing. So this is called the Ripple Effect because this is about learning about yourself and how your own actions kind of influence the world around you in like that ripple effect sort of fashion, so that you can have a better understanding of like how to, conduct yourself in daily life. So it's just like learning how to be human, for lack of better words.
Absolutely.
So Julian, you're starting us off. Why don't you just tell me a bit about yourself and who you are, and like that'll kind of give into why you're here.
Okay. My name is Julian Weirsma. I am a psychotherapist. I have been a psychotherapist for 5 years now, practicing pretty much full time. I'm a father of 2 kids, which is, they teach me more about myself than I've done a lot of personal psychotherapy, a lot of personal therapy, but
that's actually a part of your education. Like, I know that you told me that before when we like
right.
Together, right?
Yes. In my program, I am relationally trained. So we had to do like a lot of process groups, sit around in a circle, and
that's cool.
Experience each other's.
Makes sense, right? Like, you'd have to be like mentally stable in order to like treat, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If there are psychotherapy programs out there where you're not required to be in psychotherapy, I would question their
burn. We're not going to talk about any schools.
No. Yeah. But yes, being your own therapy is a core component of being a psychotherapist. For
sure. Sorry, I cut you off. You can go ahead.
No, it's okay. Relationally trained, which means that predominantly we focus on the relationship within the client's lives. Like, how are the relationships impacting your own mental health, and how are your stuff, so to speak, acting out between the different relationships. And often we work on the relationship between therapist and client. So like, how are we experiencing each other in this moment? Because if you're having hard times with people in your life outside of therapy, within time, that stuff is going to start showing up within the context of the therapy itself. Okay. Through transference, where like the client puts their work onto the psychotherapist, and countertransference, which is the reverse. So like, it shows up in the work, like our lives show up in the work with our therapists, with our clients, and vice versa, and navigating that together. So like saying, this is what's going on for us right now, and being in that moment and working through it. So that's a core component of relational psychotherapy. A lot of attachment stuff, a lot of family of origin meaning like our parents, right, and our siblings, and just how it all trickles down through the years, has a ripple effect, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow, that was purposely. So, not that I'm upset about it. So that's kind of perfect. And I mean, like, this is why I invited Julian on this podcast to start. So first of all, Julian and I actually worked together for a little over a year, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just in our work, I work in an interdisciplinary clinic, so we have psychotherapists, like occupational therapists, physiotherapists being myself, kinesiologists, that kind of all work together to help people kind of recover and whatever else. We have typically work with chronic pain and that kind of thing, and that's kind of how I got introduced to Julian. So I know firsthand that he's a phenomenal psychotherapist. The guy's been excellent, help. I know that whenever I've been kind of like at a loss, he comes in and kind of like saves the day. So we missed him once he left our clinic. Mm-hmm. But kind of diving into the idea of what you were talking about. So you said, you do a lot of relational psychotherapy. You talked about how like these interactions of different things of, your behaviors between different people and how that influence and kind of ripples out, so to speak. Mm-hmm. When I was doing my own, work, mental health wise, when I was going through psychology for my own like kind of issues, one of the things that came up was core values. And I thought that was like a really interesting thing because, I never really heard about it, and I don't know how common it is for like the general public, but could you kind of just elaborate on that? Tell us what a core value is, and then we'll kind of go through that as well.
Okay. My understanding, or how I would conceptualize a core value, is the meaning of the word core. So it's like very personal, and it's something that is feels pretty solid and unchanging. Something that it's hard to bend them. But a core value is pretty much comes from like the family of origin. So like within our families, there's structures and there's codes and there's norms and whatnot. And so a core value from a family of origin standpoint is this is how we engage in conflict, or this is how we care for each other, or this is how we express love for each other. It's like these parts of ourselves that are we don't really know where they came from necessarily, but we hold on to them. And yeah, how did your psychologist speak of core values?
Yeah, so it was the same kind of thing. It's something that's developed, the way that she spoke to me about it anyways, it's something that's developed like as you're growing up. And kind of based off of your interactions with like your family members, and it's highly influenced because like as a kid you're so easily influenced by your parents or your family or whatever else, so it kind of, those interactions are so important, and they kind of they end up navigating, I guess, a lot of your behaviors later in life. Does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, so one thing that I found really interesting about that is because, when I was going through, part of the reason why I guess you could say I suffered like whatever mental health injuries, because I had these core values about myself that were lit up by this relationship, Okay. They fed into it, and it wasn't like a positive core value that I had about myself, right? Because I guess you could have positive and negative core values about certain aspects, or how does that work? Or
Absolutely. As you're speaking, would you say that like a core value that you have of yourself could also be like a wound? Could also be like a point of trauma, right? It's a very like trauma is everywhere in psychotherapy these days, but like relational trauma, one being that like relational trauma is trauma that happens within the family that is not necessarily like abuse of all the manners of abuse or anything, but like a relational trauma is just a lack of being known for your true self or essence within the family. Okay. And that it's so unconscious and so subtle, but it can create a narrative of self for the child or for like people as they grow up, that I am this, I am that. So like a core value in that sense is very unconscious, but it's a held belief of self, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's like, that kind of explains perfectly. So I ended up in a relationship where it really lit up this, like, because I had a bit of a negative, I guess you could say, belief of self in a sense. Mm-hmm. And it really lit that up through that entire relationship, which left me in a sense like vulnerable to just, unhealthy, toxic behavior patterns in that relationship. So, just, is there a way, what I was wondering, and I guess like one thing that I kind of learned is that it's not necessarily a way to get rid of a core value, but there's a way to learn about it and just like adapt so that you can kind of understand that about yourself. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what are like some things that you could do? Is there like general things that you can kind of do to help even be aware of something like that? Or is this like something you have to go to psychotherapy to learn about,
A great place to start is to be curious about self, about others, and how you interact with others. So if you find that like a reoccurring feeling arises when you're in different situations, so if you're in conflict with a boss, or if you're in conflict with a partner, or if there's conflict within your family, you notice like conflict is really scary for me. Like I get into my fight or flight when I'm in conflict, meaning that you're like in your hindbrain, and your frontal lobe, whereas yours like your higher self and your higher functioning is like your analytical self. You get into the back of your brain, and it's like fight or flight. You just need to get out of the situation. You have to defend, or you have to leave. So if you're noticing these patterns of yourself, just ask yourself like, what's going on here? Like, what am I coming up against unconsciously? Because it might be unconscious that you might not even know what it is. Or what am I coming up against consciously that I can say, yeah, this is the pattern. So identifying patterns, or recognizing that, yeah, there are patterns in your life, but the curiosity of like, why am I like this? Because it's so easy to, out of self-protection or out of defense, is to ascribe your reaction to others. Saying like, this is their fault because of this. This is their fault because of this. This is their fault because of this. So if it's everyone else's fault, then you don't have to change. Then you're the victim, and everyone's acting out on you. And to break it down to say, they're behaving in this way, and I'm going to behave the way I behave. And sorry, this is one of those break points.
Don't worry about it.
So where were we? We were at patterns of other people. It's easy to, yeah. So you defend yourself, you write people off, or you say it's on them, it's not on me. So then you don't have to change. But if you get curious about how you participate in those conflicts, but more so about like what arises in you during the conflict. What am I reacting to within me? Because in conflict, people aren't necessarily, unless it's like violent, but they're not making you feel anything. You are reacting to the feelings that you are being established within you internally. And the way you react to conflict is based on how conflict and family of origin and whatnot was treated. So like the core value of conflict. Conflict is scary for me because it means that I might get hurt, or it means that I will be abandoned. And for children, the scariest thing is abandonment, because if we're abandoned when we're babies, we die. So it's always about, how do I stay safe? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like I get that. My psychologist, she kind of explained it as like, a way to know that your core value is kind of acting up, so to speak. If you have like a negative one, is it's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction. Like when you find that something happens and you just want to do this action without necessarily thinking, and it's like a strong like emotional pull to do it. She's like, that's typically more of an action that's like related to a core belief or a core value or whatever. Is that kind of accurate?
Right. Especially if it's covering up a wound, right? Like if we want to avoid a feeling, or if we want to avoid an instance between somebody else, we want to fix that right away. Because if we can see, it's like, this might go in this direction, and if this is going in this direction, then I'm going to potentially have this feeling. So I'm going to make sure that I knee-jerk reaction to keep it headed in the right direction, so that I don't have to feel the thing that I'm scared of feeling.
So what would be like, we're talking a lot of conceptually, but like what would be a real life example of that? Like what would what would be a knee-jerk reaction, say in a relationship between like a couple or something like that?
If you are in conflict, perhaps, and
like an argument with your girlfriend kind of thing, or
yes,
boyfriend, or partner, sorry.
Yeah, in a conflict with your partner, and they are trying to tell you about why they're upset. And it could be upset about you, or it could be upset about a family member of yours or a friend or something, and you have this knee-jerk reaction to want to talk them out of their feelings. Okay. You should not feel this way for these reasons, X, Y, and Z. Let me tell you. It's kind of like gaslighting is pretty like hip these
popular
days.
Yeah.
But it's like, let me tell you why you shouldn't be feeling this feeling.
Right.
You think that you're helping. Think that you're like helping guide them through their feeling. But actually what you're doing is you're covering up your inability to tolerate their distress. So if somebody's in distress for whatever reason, you're like, you being upset makes me feel upset.
Yeah.
Right? And that goes back to family of origin. So if our parents were upset, it's like that kind of stuff can be scary. So then you want to try to like calm them in various ways.
And stop it. Yeah.
Yeah. So a knee-jerk reaction there is like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way because I don't think they meant it that way. And then that person, your partner, gets even more elevated because they're like, you're not listening to me. So like validating their experience or aligning with their feeling and saying, that seems like that really hurts right now. And then the only thing that you can really say is, yeah, it does really hurt.
Yeah.
But if you say you shouldn't feel that way, then they need to get bigger because they have to let you know how they feel.
Yeah, so it almost just like builds into it.
Right.
And then, and that would also be, say there's a partner or like a relationship that's ending. And one partner's trying to end that relationship. The other person, is that like when the other person kind of gets hysterical to try and prevent them from leaving, sort of thing? Or like, you hear about, I don't know, just crazy stories about like one of the partners like threatens to kill themselves or something like that as a part of. Is that the same kind of thing or is that different?
Maybe they just don't want the relationship to end, or maybe they're absolutely terrified that maybe they have a fear of being alone.
Yeah.
So then they react. Yeah, they act big in a way because something is happening that they don't want to happen. So they react with threats of violence to themselves or other, or saying like, I'll never be happy again. But that more so is them trying to change your behavior.
So it is. It's kind of in the same line.
Yeah, because they're trying. Yeah, exactly. Don't feel bad. It's like if I'm big enough, then it's like a desire to return to the relationship, but like return to the homeostasis, like the equilibrium of the relationship is like, let's go back there. And that's a big part about boundaries as well. Like, because breaking up is kind of like an ultimate boundary, right? Being like, I feel like I don't want to be in this relationship. Yeah. But like, as you set boundaries, people are going to like if they reject your boundaries and they don't like it, they will act out in a way to try to get you to drop your boundary because it's more comfortable for them if you do not have that boundary.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so it's like, either way, it sounds like a lot of these core values or core beliefs kind of conduct a lot of how we act in relationships and just in our daily life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're just hindbrain autopilot most of the time. Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. But it's the curiosity of like how is my stuff showing up in this moment?
Right.
Right? Like how is my hindbrain stuff or like my past stuff showing up in this moment? Is this about the person that I'm engaging with at this moment? Or is this about like how other people I have engaged with in the past that are similar to this person? And I'm going to react to this person in that way that I had to react to people in the past.
To protect yourself.
So if somebody was big and scary as a kid, when you were a kid, you would have to get big and scary too, or like scream really loudly to like get them to back off. So yeah, when you feel that rush, it's like, okay,
yeah,
I got to be curious about this.
And we talk about, just to kind of like, see the other side of the coin. So we're talking a lot about when people kind of overreact to situations, but there can be, isn't that the same for if someone were to like push somebody away? When someone gets really, really close to them or like they start to feel a lot of emotion for someone, they'll push them away as like a knee-jerk reaction related to the same kind of thing? Or is that different?
It is similar because it's attachment, like that kind of stuff. Like they come here, go away. I always am bad on my attachment ones. But yeah, like that is I actually can't remember it, but yes, that is an attachment style where it's like I want to be close but I fear being close. So it's like a come here, go away energy. Like you recognize I need other people, but then you recognize having other people challenges me in various ways. So it's like come here, go away energy.
And it's the same kind of like knee-jerk reaction though, right? Like it's coming from whatever core belief.
Yeah, it's coming from a core belief, attachment style, and I can't believe I said, like, I'm not really clear on my attachment styles because I'm a relational psychotherapist and it's all about attachment. But yeah.
No, but it makes sense. I mean, like, it's not like those are all just like coined terms, right? Like, you're talking about the interaction itself. That's the most important.
Yeah.
So, okay, so like that's hugely helpful. Obviously, I feel like that's something that you kind of take away because obviously, I think, and just in those examples you talked about, you can see how your actions and your beliefs and whatever else are going to influence other people, right?
Yeah.
Like just in what you said, like you're already like gaslighting someone unintentionally. Like a lot of good people out there probably have gaslight. I know that I would have done something like that at some point in my life.
Yeah.
For that same reason, because your partner feels upset about whatever. You don't want them to feel upset, so you're just kind of like, oh no, like you shouldn't feel that way, like they were just joking, or they were doing this, or they were and obviously that can make them feel invalidated and whatever else, and that just kind of adds strain on the relationship. So that's already like the start of kind of what I was trying to say, not to be so cheesy, but the ripple effect, right?
Absolutely.
And then that can kind of lead down a road of like that your partner's now upset or whatever else, and then they might not want to turn to you, they might turn to somebody else, and have like, and it just kind of leads a whole downstream effect of behaviors.
Right.
Now, so that all sounds really daunting because it's like, especially hearing that like a core belief is like, oh, you have to check in with yourself, and it's something that never really goes away. You kind of always got to work on it. But what can you do? Like, being a physio, I tell everybody to exercise all the time. What's the psychotherapy equivalent of that? Like how do you tell somebody to brain exercise all the time? Like
one brain exercise would be like journaling.
Oh yeah, okay.
Like on a daily basis, or in moments of like heightened like emotive times, because you might be able to identify patterns, right? So if you write when you're distressed, or you write when you're anxious, or you reflect on these times, you might start to be recognizing patterns. And once these patterns become like show themselves to you, at that point you can work on them yourself. Be like, okay, and I find myself in these situations, this is my reaction. I do not desire to have this reaction. This is how I'm going to approach that. Primarily if you see those patterns, like going to a psychotherapist for like a few sessions, like 5 sessions, be like, and if you really want to just like, I want to deal with this and this, like they can deal with that. It's not necessarily how I work. I'm more of like a long-term, see what unfolds in the work, but there's many therapists out there who are solution focused, and you just have to find a therapist or a type of therapy that works for you. Right.
And with the journaling, can you just kind of like have at her? I know with exercise, if I were to it's good for anyone to kind of just get involved in any sort of activity, right? But it is kind of nice to always have a coach just to help you through it, and help make sure that you don't injure yourself, do too much too soon, and that kind of thing. With journaling, can you just kind of have at it, or is there kind of like a way that you could go about it, that helps you be a little bit more effective with your journaling, let's say?
I would caution to try and be peak performance all the time with mental health, because it creates this idea that like there is a peak performance.
Okay.
Because you're doing it for you. Like it's not like, let's try and get rid of this as quickly as possible. Let's like get to the best place we can be. It's more like, this is me, and this is how I am right now. And this is where I would like to lean in a little bit, or I would like to get curious about this behavior of myself. Because if we conceptualize it as a way of like, oh, we got to stop doing this thing right now, we have to be as effective as possible, it really problematizes like self. And people are just people, and people are like just themselves. And if you like learn to come to terms with like, this is me, then it takes away that drive to be better, or to be more efficient, or to be more effective. It's just like this is me. This is me, and the parts that are like enjoyable for me are this, and the parts that I would like to work on for these reasons is this. So in terms of the journaling, just like stream of thought, and then read through it and see if you can identify patterns.
Oh yeah, so just let it out, just essentially
let it out,
and then read through and just kind of see, and like reflect on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes sense, I guess. It's kind of like what you would expect it to be, I guess, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, listen, I don't have too much more to ask you about that, but like, I really appreciate you taking the time. That was like really beneficial. You know, I think like learning about core values for me was a really big game changer. You know, being a physio, I guess I look at a lot of things, and I also see a lot of parallels between like the human body and the human brain. And I know that even though I had whatever core beliefs, core values, when I had to go through my own little mental health stint, I know that before that relationship, I was a lot more confident and like stable in myself, despite that core value for the most part being there. And then I got lit up when I was in that relationship, and I was able to like kind of recognize a change in my pattern of thinking. So I attributed it, being a physio, being like, this is kind of like a weak muscle. You know, it was like I had like damaged it or whatever in that toxic relationship I was in, and now that's just like a weak muscle. I have to work on it again, because pre that relationship, you know, as much as it was there, it didn't impact my daily life as much, you know, or it seemed not to anyways. And I just had to like improve myself in that regard, and that's like a doable thing, right? I'm not overthinking that in any
No,
way.
not at all. I just hear like pre that relationship, it was like more unconscious.
Yeah.
And then the relationship brought it out based on like your interactions with your partner, and based on how you guys were in conflict, and based on like their own work that was going undone. That in that moment when you guys were in conflict, it was just like the perfect storm for you.
Yeah.
That it was like, oh, this is hitting all of my like really, really tender spots.
Yeah.
And it could have stayed unconscious, but it really pulled it out into the forefront.
Right. But it was good, you know, at least for me, because it gave me something to like be conscious of. You know, there were probably like, I don't necessarily, it was so subconscious beforehand, but I'm sure that there was tons of interactions that I had that were kind of driven by that, not really thinking about it, because it was subconscious.
Yeah.
You know.
And people don't really change until the pain is great enough. Right? I'm pretty sure you can ascribe that to physiotherapy as well.
Oh yeah.
That is like, oh, my knee hurts a little bit, but like then they go to physio, like the vast majority of people, once they really can't walk, right?
Yeah.
They try and push through. But the same goes for people in with their mental health, right? Like they don't change until the pain is too great to like do anything about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, talk about an epic end note there. So I think the takeaway from this, right, is, you know, take a minute to reflect on your core values and the subconscious actions that you want to take in your relationships, and the way when you're feeling like, for lack of a better word, triggered in those situations, you know, to just have a knee-jerk reaction. Take a minute and think about it, because it really does influence other things that happen. We didn't really get into it, but you talked about these kind of family interactions and how your core values are determined from your familial relationships, essentially, right? Growing up. But essentially what that means is that as a parent, if you're not going to do your work to take care of yourself, you're going to kind of impose these sort of negative core values on your kids as they grow, right? So it's something that you want to think about and kind of take the time to work on in yourself, so that you don't, you know, you give your kids the best chance going forward.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that kind of just speaks to like how many ripples you're really creating in your daily life just with every interaction you make, and why it's worth it to just take a second and try and be as good a person as you can, you know,
right.
and do your due diligence when it comes to your mental health.
Yeah, you don't want your ripple effect to be a tidal wave that destroys everything
Small
in front
children.
of you. Yeah. All your relationships are swept to sea.
Yeah.
No, you want like a soft, it's like,
just a nice, gentle way.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks a lot, Julian, for taking the time to come out and chat with me, man. I really appreciate it. And we'll kind of end it here.